Hi there, in part two, in the second edition of this new series of short videos looking at some of the amazing facts in Rangers history. I'll delve into the journey of Mr Bill Struth, which eventually seen him arrive at Ibrox. If you're enjoying the videos, please hit the subscribe button and a little bell notification emblem, and that will allow YouTube to tell you when we release more videos. And if you like any particular video, please hit the thumbs up. It does great things for the channel. So back to Mr Struth. He was born in 1875 through in Leith in Edinburgh. He started off life as a stonemason and a professional athlete. He done very well as a professional athlete, and he competed through his 20s and into his early 30s. And this put him into contact with people like the great Eric Liddell, who was immortalised with the movie Chariots of Fire, which showed his amazing feats at the Paris Olympics, where the story of the final of his chosen event being in the Sabbath made him stand down from that and go into a substitute position in another event, which he went on to win a gold medal. It's an amazing story, and he was a close friend of Mr Struth, which we'll discuss later on. So Mr Struth, as I say, had a background in athletics, which taught him the importance of fitness and certain types of training, unusual to football teams at the time. And he, in the early part of the 20th century, he started helping out at Hearts as a trainer to give them some fitness training. Now, we're unsure if he was a paid employee there or indeed a full-time employee at Hearts, but he certainly did help Hearts in the early parts of the 1900s to improve the fitness of their players. So much so that in 1908, Clyde, who were a far bigger team then than they are now, were looking to become more successful, and they persuaded Mr Struth to move from Edinburgh through to Glasgow and become their trainer. He spent 6 years at Clyde, in which times they achieved status as Scottish Cup finalists twice, unfortunately unable to win the Cup for Clyde, but that was an achievement back in those days, where the Scottish Cup was an amazing tournament held in high regard, and one that the majority of teams wanted to win and be regarded as Scottish Cup winners. Now, Mr Struth came to the attention of Rangers 2 years before he joined in 1914, when he was approached by the club with a view to coming to join Rangers as their coach, because Rangers had seen the improvements that were made with Clyde and the effect that had on their team and their relative success at the time. But Mr Struth, being a man of principle, inquired if there was indeed a man in that position at present and what was to be the outcome should Mr Struth accept the job. And when he learned that the man in the position would indeed be relieved from his position should Mr Struth decide to join Rangers, he politely refused the advances, which is quite a good example of Mr Struth's standards, that possibly higher than a lot of other people at that time and indeed in present times, that he refused to take the job because he felt there was a man in that job and he didn't wish to interfere with that man's position. So that was fair play to him. Unfortunately, the coach passed away a couple of years later, but very, very fortunate for Rangers, Mr Struth was then able to accept the advances of Rangers, and he joined Rangers in 1914. He formed a formidable partnership with the then manager, the first manager of the Rangers, Mr Wilton, up until Mr Wilton's untimely death in 1920, that saw Mr Struth advanced into the position of manager. And that story should and will take a lot of the future videos that we produce to discuss some of the amazing facts in Rangers history. And when he arrived at the club, he was one of the main protagonists for the success of the Rangers athletic meetings that used to take place annually at Ibrox, and was indeed one of the most high profile athletics events in the country at the time. And through those and his connections with Eric Liddell in the past, Eric Liddell was often seen at Ibrox, where he was offered to train at the facility, and indeed often trained with the players, and I would imagine, and jokingly, offered them challenges to race round the track, which I'm not sure of the outcome of those, but I can imagine there'd be some man to beat at the racing. So that tells you how Bill Struth came to Ibrox, what happened, you know, how he got there, and the lead up to that, and what he was doing with football, athletics, and work previous to joining Rangers. Mr Struth, obviously, a man that I hold in special regard, and I'm quite positive that he'll be a subject of quite a lot of these videos as we continue. But his introduction to Rangers led to fascinating things, not only for the history of Rangers while he was there, but for the future of Rangers, and many standards became paramount to the club, some of them even up until this day. And his story, how he got there, is equally as fascinating, with the impact he had in Scottish football at Hearts and then Clyde, which then culminated in Rangers' efforts to sign him. And as you can see from his specialist athletic background and his strong beliefs in the athleticism and fitness of players being important, that it was groundbreaking at the time and very modern of the day, probably years ahead of many of his contemporaries, and the impact should not be forgotten, and which led to the current day, where we have fitness trainers and conditioning coaches and sprint trainers. Another thing that Mr Struth introduced into football was having running coaches to teach players how to run efficiently and effectively. And a remarkable story of a man who was a pioneer in many ways for the club, for how it went about its business, how it played football, and the importance of fitness. He was very, very strong on that, and you can understand why. And it went on to serve not only him, not only Rangers, but Scottish football, because of his introduction. A lot of things that were unheard of at the time. So that's how Mr Struth ended up at Ibrox. And if you enjoyed the video, please give us a thumbs up, and I look forward to producing some more short videos looking at some of the unusual, the amazing, or unique aspects of Rangers' amazing 150-year plus history. Thanks for viewing.